So I've lived in about 3 islands and 1 country. Completely different cultures altogether. And there's one thing I can basically tell you, that when you're actually moving abroad, you actually want to leave with a plan. You want to have a plan on hand. In the movies, in the Hollywood movies, people would always say like, I'm going to move to LA. I'm going to go to New York. Do you have a plan? No, I don't have a plan. All I have is a dream. I think that's a very stupid idea. If you actually try to come to the Dominican Republic without a plan and just a dream and aspirations, most likely you're going to get scammed, you're probably going to get robbed, and some things are going to happen that you probably don't want to happen. It's not like it's a dangerous place, but it's just never smart to leave what you know to somewhere where you absolutely don't know anything and just go without a plan. You actually want to have a plan. I wish I had this plan before I moved to Puerto Rico the first time, because I would have saved a lot of money, because I got scammed, and in my opinion, I also got robbed, okay? But yeah, if you watch this video, you're not going to make those mistakes, because now I live in DR, and a lot of those mistakes I made in PR, I did not make this time because of experience. Experience is a very costly way to actually learn things, okay? So let's get right into this video. Do me a favor and smash the like button. Now, the very first thing, guys, is going to be, we gotta cover the basics. You wanna learn about the entry requirements, but also the requirements to actually stay in the country. In Dominican Republic, I'm actually gonna post this right here and screenshot it and review it in your own time. There are several ways for you to actually come and stay here, and they have certain requirements and so on that you can actually meet. But the first thing is, I really wouldn't worry as much, for example, about the staying requirements, because it's not really that hard and that difficult, although some countries and some islands can be very hard for you to actually stay there. But for the most part, most places, if you live in the US, they kind of want you to come and to actually help promote the economy's growth and so on. So they're probably not going to make it that difficult for you. So just review and screenshot what I just showed you. But for the most part, you want to be at least aware of what the requirements are to come in and what the requirements are to actually stay here, all right? It's gonna be very important. Now, the second thing is, guys, you don't want to forget, is super important here, is going to be your phone plan, and on top of that, also your health insurance. So your phone plan. If you have, for example, a US number that you had for a very long time, if you're like me, I don't change my number. I've had 2 numbers while I was in the US, and guess what? My mom has the number I had before, and I have my new number, which I've had literally for like almost over like, I think like maybe like 8 to 10 years. I just don't like switching numbers whatsoever, all right? So that's how I am. So even when I moved from the US down here to the Dominican Republic, because remember, if you have certain banks and you have certain apps you actually use with like secondary authorization for like, password stuff, where they actually text you a code, the answer is you don't want to lose your number, obviously, right? So what I did was I got a service called Tello. Tello's like any other like phone service. Like they have, for 30 bucks, they give you unlimited internet and unlimited call and text, so it's good. But for me, I can't use my US service here, and I'm not really making calls, for example. So I pay just about $7 for about 300 minutes of calling, unlimited text, and 1 gig of internet. That 1 gig is for whenever I actually go on vacation and I need to be able to access vacation to the US. And I need to actually access, for example, my WhatsApp to send a text or whatever. And the call in is because I can connect to the Wi-Fi here and call the US friends and be fine, all right? And the text unlimited is because I want to be able to receive text. But just for $7, I get to keep my number and everything. And if you want to pay even less, their cheapest plan, I think, is about $5 or so. So yeah, you'll be pretty good. Now, when it comes to health insurance, don't be like me, okay? I took about a year and a half to actually get health insurance here. You should not do that. And the day I actually got health insurance, no lie, that same week I got super sick, had to go to the hospital, had to get checkups, and then had to get medicine, all that stuff. And the hospital basically covered, the insurance basically covered most of it. Now, there is one piece of advice I'm going to tell you. When you're getting health insurance in a foreign place, your first thing is usually going to be compare prices. In the US, we pay so much, here so cheap. Don't listen to that, okay? Because if you do that, if you start comparing things, you're not going to be able to evaluate things. They have several tiers. For example, here in Dominican Republic, you have Humano, you have Larimal, and you have Senasa. I have the things down below in the description. But the point is, these plans that have like super high ones where you're paying like maybe like $120 a month, and you're like, that's nothing, right? Like $100, that's nothing, right? But you don't want to do that because you don't need that. So I currently pay, because I'm married, I pay about $100. But there's obviously like two more plans that cost more money. But when you actually look at the details, what am I gonna get? Not actually what I want. Okay, it's the same exact thing. So be very careful comparing prices and paying more money than you actually need to. Now, number three, guys, is actually going to be, you have to, here's my advice, right? If you're gonna be coming here, I recommend you do it on a trial basis. So there's two options. You could actually do, for example, a fully furnished apartment, like a rental, or you can do an Airbnb. I like the Airbnb idea best. Here's why. Because if I go, for example, to Puerto Rico, where I actually used to live before, and I stayed first in one area and I find out this sucks and I actually want to go to another area, I could just hop from one Airbnb to the next Airbnb. But if I get a fully furnished apartment, unless it's a month-to-month lease, well, I'm stuck there for like 6 months, like a year, and I have to wait longer, right? So when you're trying things out, flexibility is going to be very important. And that's what I'm telling you, get a fully furnished apartment. And when you come over, don't bring a bunch of stuff, okay? Just bring the basic necessities, so that way you can take care of what you need to take care of and just do the job you actually are there to do, which is basically look at the area and see if you actually like it or not. By the way, watching videos is great, and hearing about this place in Punta Cana or this place in Santo Domingo and this place and that place, these are all great ideas, okay? But I highly recommend try things out for yourself, because different people have different perspectives, and what they value, you may not value. I cannot stand Punta Cana. I would not want to live in Punta Cana or in Santo Domingo. I'd rather live in a small town. So trying those things out helps me out a lot, all right? Now, number four is going to be, once you figure out that you actually like the place, do not rush into actually buying a house and buying things that are very hard to sell. So here's my perspective here, guys, okay? When I first arrived, for example, to Puerto Rico, and I'm using Puerto Rico as an example because that's where I made most of my mistakes. Here, I did not. I first arrived and I didn't know the area or anything like that. So I ended up paying like $800 a month to rent a place that was being rented for $400. I got the gringo tax because I was ignorant, all right? Be very careful with that. It's very real. And then when I find that out, I move somewhere else and I start paying like $700 a month, but it's a nice place. And then I'm like, I'm having issues with the landlord. I want to move. And you know what I say? I'm going to be here forever. So I might as well just buy a house. I bought a house, okay? Bad mistake. It's been like a year and a half and I'm already buying a house. Not a good idea. My recommendation is stay for at least 2 years after your trial and then decide if you actually want to buy a house. Because sometimes you have this illusion and then the goal is you want to become disillusioned. Disillusion is when you start seeing things for what they actually are. You start seeing that that's pretty dirty, that's pretty ugly, that's pretty expensive. But then you say, you know what? I love this place. I still want to live here. But when you're at a stage where you're like, everything's so great, that's the time where you don't want to buy a house because you're not seeing things for what they really are. And once you buy a house, I got extremely lucky. I was able to sell it and basically break even. But you could get extremely unlucky and basically just lose a ton of money. All right. So that's my advice. Do not rush into buying a property. Don't worry about the tax incentives and all the stuff that you're going to lose out on. Don't worry about that stuff. Okay. It doesn't make sense if you're not ready to. Okay. Now, number 5 is going to be, when moving, remember this. Now, you have, for example, sell, store, or bring. My recommendation is going to be, most of the stuff you have, for example, in Dominican, wherever you're staying at, most of the stuff you could probably just sell. I really wouldn't store things for the most part, and I really wouldn't bring things, okay? Now, if you have, for example, things that are very expensive here, like when I was in Puerto Rico, I had a fridge, a washer, a sofa, a dining table. I had basically microwave oven. I had all the things, a bed. I had everything to furnish a house, okay? And I ran the numbers, and it was like, well, if I were to bring things here, it would cost me about $3,500. If I were to try to buy those things here, it would cost me over $10,000 to $15,000. So I was like, you know what I'm gonna do? I'm gonna bring my stuff over. But when I was going from New York to Puerto Rico, most of my stuff didn't make sense to actually bring, because paying $3,000 for things that have a value of $1,000 just don't make any sense, okay? And then you just like basically repurchase somewhere else. So A lot of things, just sell it and get rid of it and just repurchase if it does make sense, okay? That's very important. On top of that, you really want to consider learning the language. I know people that they live in places where I don't need to learn the language. Everyone speaks English here, but that's handicapping yourself because if you don't know the language, if you're stuck somewhere, if you're trying to negotiate, if you're trying to have a conversation, if you're trying to build community, if you're trying to build roots, it's going to be very hard because you just don't know the language, okay? So even just practicing some Duolingo, learning some basic words, getting yourself around people that actually speak the language is going to be super, super important, okay? Imagine me, for example, living in the US, in New York, not knowing English. Yeah, I could basically be just fine because most places in the Bronx that speak like Spanish. But guess what? What happens when I go somewhere else or I'm trying to talk to somebody and they don't understand like Spanish? Okay, I'm gonna be worse off. I'm gonna be in a worse off position than I would if I did know the language. Okay, so that's what I'm saying. And then the last thing I want to mention here for the things you want to keep in hand here is going to be safety. Safety is very important. Dominican Republic is not a dangerous place per se. But it can be if you're an idiot. So here's what I mean. You really want to take a look at the locals and the way the locals actually live where you're actually located, okay? That's very important. Because, for example, where I live, I see people basically walking around. They look nice, right? They have some jeans, they have a shirt on. I don't see people with fancy watches. I don't see people with fancy like jewelry and like big chains. I don't see people basically showing off their phones on the streets. And so you know what I do? I take those cues and I'm like, you know what? I'm not going to basically dress a whole bunch of fancy, have a whole bunch of chains and have a whole bunch of jewelry and be flashing my phone everywhere. I don't see anyone with a big camera walking around. People get robbed, okay? So when you take a look at the locals, try to emulate them and the way they live. They live like that for a reason. And there's one more thing when I want to talk about safety is that safety does not equal expensive. I live in an area now where I'm spending like $150 like a month on rent, okay? It's a small town. And guess what? I am safe here. I am super safe here. But some people say, no, to be safe, I need to be paying like $2,000 for a closed community in Punta Cana. You know, that's their version of safety. That's just expensive to me. So again, safety does not equal more expensive. It just depends on where you're going to live and the type of lifestyle you're choosing to actually live and what you're choosing to actually show, okay? It's very important. That's what I'm telling you. Try different neighborhoods out, do an Airbnb, and test everything out. Now, the last tip I can possibly give you is join a community of some sort. So try to become a part of the community. So for me personally, as a Christian, I'm a part of the church, I'm a part of that community, and I'm more than fine with that, okay? And then I have my family here and everything else, okay? But having, for example, people you talk to, some people like golfing, tennis, or whatever it is, or just, for example, like music or whatever, try to find clubs and social clubs and that stuff. That way you can actually meet people and get to know places because you won't learn as much from a local than you would, for example, well, you'll learn more from a local than you would, for example, from reading it online or even watching this video, okay? Because locals know. And don't be so trusting, okay? Don't be so trusting. It's very important. People seem nice, and usually they are, but just be careful. That's my advice. Thanks for watching this video. I actually hope it helps you, and I hope you don't make a lot of the mistakes that I made. I'll see you guys next time, and as always, peace, subscribe to the channel. See you guys next time.